Hello, team. Welcome to our first ever virtual One Team meeting. While we'd rather be greeting you in person, welcoming you into the Orpheum, and preventing you from trying to sneak up into some balcony seats, we're not going to let today's situation stop us from staying connected and sharing our good energy. So it's really important that we all keep connected. And today is one step towards continuing to do that. We hope to bring you several more of these virtual One Team meetings to keep us all informed and keeping us cohesive and with just great strength and unity in our culture of service. There's a lot of pride in being a public servant right now, and we are doing some incredible work to serve our community, to serve ourselves, our families, and to serve our teams, right? Our work family. So there's no better time than right now to really strengthen that culture of service. So with that, please give a warm welcome to Mayor Paul.
Hey, thank you, Raina. I wore a tie, even though it was a virtual meeting, I still tied up for you guys. So I miss seeing a lot of you all. Some of you I get to see regularly, more often than I ever have at the EOC and with some of our other operations. Some of you I haven't. I miss giving high fives, hugs, all that stuff. So I look forward to seeing you guys in person soon again. Want to thank Rana for helping line this up. I really appreciate it. What's been interesting is watching how city government has responded to COVID in the last 30 days, 45 days. So if anyone ever says that government cannot respond quickly to anything and that we move slowly, I would ask them to look at the last 45 days and see what we have done in this city, which has been so inspiring. And you guys are all a big part of that. And I had an interview this morning with Kello, and they were asking about what's been the hardest part of getting through all this and what's been the easiest part. I mean, what has made this better? And I talked about the team. And I said, listen, I oftentimes get to be the face in interviews and briefings and all that, but man, it's just, I'm just an empty suit without all these people. And we got such a great team of people. And from the directors that you're going to hear from today all the way down. So it's been my role to date to primarily be a communicator, and we've been trying to communicate with you as best we can. I know it's not enough. You can't be over communicated enough right now. And I've been using a principle called the Stockdale paradox, and I just want to unpack that because we're going to talk about that a little today. The Stockdale paradox is based on a general who was a POW, a Navy general during the Vietnam War named James Stockdale. And when he finally got released as a POW, he was interviewed and there was books about him. And he talked about the fact that the people who didn't make it through being a POW and were challenged during those times were the ones that were overly optimistic. He said, listen, they're coming for us any day. We're going to be out of here any day. And they didn't last. The people who did last were the ones who accepted the reality of their situation. Said, this is life, we're going to deal with it, but we know there's hope at the end. So you got to give people realism. You got to let them know that, listen, we're not going to get rid of COVID in a week. We're not going to be, I remember when the federal government was saying we're going to have full churches by Easter in the press conferences. And I said, listen, we can't say that because that's not true. We have to talk about the next several weeks and months are going to be hard. And I'm here to tell you, they're going to be hard. They're going to be hard. What I will tell you is the people that you're going to hear from today are working absolutely tirelessly to protect your jobs, to protect the city from COVID, to protect our economy, to protect your rights as employees and as residents of the city. So we will get through this. We come into this in a strong position, both from a financial position as well as the team members that we have. I'm biased, but I think you have one of the best leadership teams in the history of the city right now that's been assembled. And so you will get through this. What we're going to do today is just have a conversation with some directors and some leadership. First person I'm going to chat with is Erica Beck. Erica's chief of staff, as you know. And she's been working a lot with the internal crisis management team and how they're operating. So Erica, why don't you tell us about the COOP team and the newly formed, crisis executive team that we've set up and what sort of work they're doing.
Thank you for asking, Mayor. I appreciate your comments with respect to the team that's in place and the amount of work that they've been doing in such a very, very short amount of time. And I feel like we need to talk about that team to a greater extent and let all of you know how fortunate we are that this team is in place. The COOP team through the EOC was stood up at the beginning of this situation, and it consists of roughly 30 team members from across all of our departments. And that COOP team has been doing such a phenomenal job of getting guidance out to all of you with respect to how we as an administration are approaching this pandemic that we find ourselves in, and different guidance that hopefully you have found to be helpful to you in understanding how we're approaching this situation. So the executive team that the mayor mentioned, the executive COOP team, was really formed within our organization to help make very quick and timely decisions as we move from a planning and mitigation phase to a response phase, and then eventually even to a recovery phase. And so we're very fortunate to have that team in place. It's made up of a number of different directors and other members of the COOP, and they will be the group that's pushing out communications to all of you through RANA, because RANA serves on that COOP exec team and is responsible for internal communications and ensuring that all of you are getting the timely information that you need. So hopefully that answers your question, Mayor. I'm so proud of the work that's been done by this team and in the very short amount of time that we've had to accomplish it.
So tell me, on a personal level, what's something you're doing to kind of keep, we talk about our victory mindset in the city and kind of keep focused. You got kids at home still, and you got a husband whose job's being affected by this. Like, how are you handling this with your family and your home life?
Great question. Thanks for asking that. I know some days are better than others for me, as I'm sure they are for all of you too. On a personal level, I would share with this group that I have to continue to make sure that I'm following a routine. That's important to me. So I get up early every morning and I read my devotionals and I journal about them every morning, or at least I try to every morning. And that really provides me with kind of an opportunity to recenter and think about how I'm going to approach the day. And then during the day, I've been really trying to focus on connecting with my kids. So whether it's, calling my daughter or, tuning into a text message from my husband or my son, I think that's incredibly important for all of us to recognize that we're all in this together, and that includes our families. And sometimes we get very focused in on our day-to-day work, and we forget about those touch points that need to be happening. So I would encourage all of you to try to incorporate something like that into your day as it makes sense. Yeah,
great advice. Thanks, Erica. All right, we're going to move on and talk with Sean in finance. As you guys know, Sean is our director of finance, has been taking this obviously very seriously, so seriously he sold all the artwork off his wall and he has nothing in his office anymore. And so, Sean, I'm kidding, buddy, but let's talk about the financial implication of the crisis and tell us about it. I mean, we come into this in a fairly strong position as a city, but where do we sit right now in terms of the financial health of the organization? Are jobs at risk? Are programming services, are we going to have to cut those? What are you thinking from a city standpoint?
I appreciate that lead in, because we came into from 2019 by all accounts was a really solid and good year for us financially, and that continued into the first 3 months of this year as well. But this certainly changes things dramatically for the city. The main thing that I like to get across to people is, because of the strength that we've had as a city, we have a lot of opportunities for us. We have an opportunity to adapt. and to be flexible in ways that many other communities across the country really would hope to be in that same position. And so you may read in different news articles and media outlets about cities that are dealing with some pretty distressed financial situations, and they're giving amounts for what it's hurting their budgets and how it's affecting their employees and their services. And we're not immune to that, but I will say that we're in a good position from a starting basis, and that's been a very positive thing for us. As far as how this affects employment, I think most employees would like to know what it matters to them and their employment with the city. And I would say our first priority right now is to make sure that we can retain our employees to the maximum extent possible. And we are making some changes, and there has been some difficult decisions made, and there may be some coming forward in the future. But even small things like not always filling all of our full-time positions unless they're really critical right now. And holding back on some seasonal hiring. Yes, that is requiring us as an organization to make some adjustments, but it's also providing an opportunity for some employees whose lives have been changed a little bit during this time period to be realigned to other areas and to help in other areas throughout our whole system, and really taking that one team approach. So from that standpoint, again, we're really focused on putting employees first and keeping our employees engaged, because we will need you as we go through the next several months. Go ahead.
Well, let me ask you a related question. So people talk about, the pandemic effect in terms of lives that'll be lost or hospitalization beds. And a lot of people say, what's the economic effect of this? And people said, no one's ever talking about that. Part of it is, it's hard to predict because we're literally only 40 days into this in Sioux Falls. But do we know, Sean, what we think the economic effect of this might be to our city?
We certainly know that there will be economic impact, but to what extent that is and for how long that lasts, that's hard to determine at this time. There's a lot of people out there that will say that our economy will shrink 30% in the second quarter of this year, and that's quite possible. For us, it's a little bit harder. We rely a lot on sales taxes to fund our general operations and for our capital investments. And it will be several months before we actually get to see the first data coming in to know what that impact is for us. So the best thing we can do right now is plan ahead and to adapt the best we can. We're running different scenarios of what reductions in those revenues will look like for us and how we react to that in the best way possible. But we don't want to be overly reactive either. And we have an opportunity to make sure that we continue to support our local economy. We provide essential services for this community, and the money that is spent by the city, it has a huge impact and turns over many, many times in this community. And it affects job creation and job retention throughout our community. So we want to make sure that we are continuing to invest. But I will say every employee has a responsibility here to make smart decisions in your area of influence and to ask yourselves, how can I be more efficient in what I'm doing? The spending that we're doing right now, is it needed? Is it needed now, or can it wait? To really be self-reflective and innovative in what we're doing to make sure that we are maximizing the resources that we have right now.
Great points. Before I kick it over to Jill, what's one thing you're doing on the home front to kind of keep your head and your wits? You also got young kids in the house, and tell me what you're doing to kind of maintain a good mental and physical strength right now.
I love getting outside, and so getting my kids outside and hiking and biking and getting active, that's been awesome. And now that it's getting nicer weather, that's getting better every day.
Good. Thanks, Sean. I'm going to talk with Jill Franken a little bit. Yeah, she probably needs no introduction because she has been on TV more in the last month than probably her entire life. Jill is doing such a great job leading our public health team, and she's actually in our emergency operations center right now. And so, Jill, thank you for everything you've done. I so appreciate you. So let's talk a little bit about the clinical side and the health side of COVID. Tell me what the patient volumes have looked like and what we're seeing with hospitalizations. And, as we sit here, as we record this, today is April 23, what we're seeing today.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. It's really an honor, actually, to be in the EOC and to be incident command of this operation, but it certainly has been a challenge, that's for sure. And part of the work that I do is with the Unified Command, and that's with Dr. Elliott and Dr. Wilby from Avera and Sanford. And so they keep us well informed as to every day as to how the hospitals are doing. We've been working to predict where they're going to be at the peak of this in our community. And right now, today, they're between the two organizations, they're right around between 50 and 60 patients that are being cared for in their facilities that are COVID positive. That's between the two. So any given day they can vary, but that's where we're at right now. Certainly that's going to increase in the days to come here. Yeah,
Jill,
go ahead.
can I ask you a question on that? I don't follow. Yeah. Only 50 to 60 patients in the hospital. Then why are we having to do all this? Like, and again, I'm setting you up here, but there are a lot of people that'd be like, there's 50 people in the hospital. What we're getting, this is just way overblown. Why are we doing all this for only 50 people in a hospital?
Well, so you probably, those of you watching, can't necessarily see this, but this was presented to our city council last week, and the mayor has actually used this in his press briefings each day. And this has given us an idea of where we're going to be with our hospitalizations in the weeks to come. And so this blue surge right here is where we're going to be with hospitalizations. And then that gray bar across is indicating the hospital's capacity to care for patients. This is just our Minnehaha and Lincoln County numbers, and they predict that, we should be tipping anywhere just slightly above 700 patients at the peak. And so when you think about where we're at today with, right around that 50 mark, and you think of that being at around maybe even slightly above 700, and that's just for Minnehaha and Lincoln County's projections. That's not counting other patients from other communities that will be coming to the system, both of Avera and Sanford hospitals here in Sioux Falls. That's a heavy burden, and they are prepared. They're ready to provide the care that they need to everyone that comes to them. But as to quote one of the physicians who's been talking about this and helping to communicate the preparedness for Avera, he said this will be unprecedented numbers of people that will be cared for. Part of that's because we still will have people, unfortunately, having other issues that will lead them to the hospital. There will still be people who have chest pain, who have maybe have a stroke or other types of issues that they have to be in the hospital for. They have to be receiving care. And so there will be additional patients being served even above and beyond those that'll be in for having COVID.
So if you have COVID, and you contract it and then you recover, are you then immune to it? Can you contract it again? Do we know that yet?
Yeah, there's so many things that we might be learning about COVID, but there's so much yet to learn. And, this is really just the very beginning of what we'll know probably even 2 years from now, when you think about how much you have to experience and go through a pandemic and a new virus to really understand where it's, the things that you need to know, especially if you're going to be working through prevention activities in the future. But right now, they are thinking there's some immunity that people will get, to answer your question, from this. But what they don't know is how long that will last. They don't yet know if that's weeks, months, years. Those are things that we'll learn more as we go through this time period, and studies will be done, and they will be able to understand that as they're also developing vaccine, as well as possible treatments for COVID. So it's a question we get a lot. Another question that we get a lot about right now is around this whole notion of isolation and quarantine. That's another question that and it's also an issue that we're working through as an EOC. I've explained this a lot, that someone who is in quarantine is someone who's been in contact with someone who is COVID positive. You may not have COVID, but you've been exposed to it. And so that would be where the State Department of Health would then say you need to be placed in quarantine to make sure that we can discern whether or not you become COVID positive. And so that's one set of ways that people have to be managed through this. Another is if you end up being positive, you're not feeling well, and for some reason you are tested and you are a COVID positive, then you also will be placed in then called isolation. And that is to protect others from being exposed to you and then themselves having to be placed in quarantine as a result. So those are questions we get a lot, and we are working closely with the State Department of Health and with our section of the EOC that works with populations that need that isolation and quarantine to make sure everybody in our community is effectively doing that. That's one of the most important mitigation practices that we have, is effectively putting people in quarantine and getting them isolated. That's going to help us a lot as a community. It's similar to social distancing, right? When someone's in quarantine, it means they're socially distanced from others. And so that's really important work in the prevention strategy, Mayor.
So what are you doing to keep your head on straight and to find rest and keep your batteries recharged right now?
Yeah, this girl needs a lot of sleep. So I've been trying to get as much rest as possible, but I also spending time, with my husband, going for walks is really energizing. But most importantly, I try and spend some time at the end of each day reading notes from people. It's been incredible support of the community, not just our community of Sioux Falls, but even people outside of Sioux Falls that know what we're going through here and know the work that we're doing, that'll send emails, letters. I get cards in the mail to my home and to work. I get posts on Facebook, et cetera, and try to spend some time answering those at night. And that really recharges my batteries.
Oh, I gotta share this with you then before we move on. I got this letter in the mail today, and Sean, I'm not sure how to handle this from the finance perspective, but lady that lives in Manhattan, seeing Sioux Falls on the news, she says, we think of you, we pray for you, encloses a check for $50 to help your city, even in a small way.
See,
$50 check from some lady in Manhattan that is watching Sioux Falls and wants to help us. And so people are watching and noticing and are appreciating the work and what we're doing to get through this. So thanks, Jill. All right, let's talk a little bit with Bill. Bill, you have obviously put a lot of guidance, to the whole human resources and personnel piece of this, which has been very, very challenging. I know it's made us all uncomfortable. I know if I would have asked Bill O'Toole 6 months ago to create a strategy for all our employees to work remote, I think Bill would have punched me in the nose. And somehow we've done it. We figured it out. Are we as efficient as we could be if we're all together? It's tough to say. I know we miss the community of one another. I know I do, and I know a lot of you as team members do. But Bill, let's talk a little bit about reallocating employees. I know some departments are doing that, and we're having to probably do some things we never thought we'd be doing before, even myself included. So what does that mean when you talk about reallocating employees? And I've even heard Sanford Health, they talk about upskilling. They use the term upskill. They say we've upskilled 200 employees, meaning they've given them new skills that they're using in a different way. I think that's a great term. So talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. You know, and talking about all the guidance, there's such a solid team at the Coop working just on such a high level, producing this guidance. And I'd really like to just kind of prop that up and set up that obvious, and I hope it's obvious to everybody that why we're doing that in this mitigation phase is obviously we're trying to reduce the spread, but ultimately we're also trying to protect the health and safety of our employees. That's what's ultimately behind all of the guidance that we're producing. But I'm really proud of the team's work in that regard. I think we've done a good job of trying to get that information out there and partnering with communications to make sure our employees understand what's coming and why we're doing those things. Yeah, as for the reallocation, yeah, we're in really interesting times right now. You know, we're closed to the public. We're open for business. We're meeting essential city services in the community. That means some of our customer-facing folks might have fewer demands than in the past, and just present some opportunities for us to say, based on some other activities that we've done with respect to our hiring and scaling back in the seasonal area, to look at our workforce and think differently and maybe work differently in a way to meet needs that may exist elsewhere. I think probably the best example that I give, or I can liken this to, is the similarity of Project Nice and Keep, where we bring employees from across all sectors of the city of Sioux Falls, and they sign up and agree to work differently for a week, doing different things, serving different things. They get paid their wage from their home department, and there's a lot of pride in that. It's a very one Sioux Falls kind of thing, and it's something that people really enjoy doing. You know, this isn't the same environment, but I think the concept's the same, where we're trying to say where we have these opportunities to utilize our workforce, maximize the resources that we have, keep people working, which is really important to us. You know, we're going to ask some folks to maybe do something differently. They might work differently. You won't be in your home department. We might ask you to go somewhere else to meet another need that exists. And I think there could be a lot of pride in doing things like that. We're hopeful that, you know, if you're one of those employees that we ask you to work differently to meet a different need, that you embrace the opportunity and the challenge. You know, we did take a talent survey some time ago. We have the ability to access that as we're looking at trying to make some of these opportunity reallocations. So we're kind of excited about continuing that trend. I thank all of you if you've already been doing it. You might even see more in the future to help sustain us and meet our needs. And we greatly thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And if employees watching also cut hair, I could use one of those. So you reach out to our office, but I'll use a very real example though. You talk about reallocating staff. We've had someone in the mayor's office the last couple weeks. Her name's Courtney. Courtney works in the library, and the volume of communications coming into our office has been like nothing our office has ever seen. We just got a lot of people we got to get back to, we got to respond to. People want to be communicated with right now. So I reached out to the library and I said, I need someone who's got some thick skin and is a good communicator and is ready to step up and help us. And Courtney's been incredible. So that's a good example of kind of a one Sioux Falls mentality. You know, what are the two biggest benefit changes you would highlight? Like, talk to us about anything the staff needs to know about benefits. What's going on with benefits?
Yeah, that's actually a great and timely question, and I think we've done a fair amount of communicating about this as well. And bar none, it would be the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that went into effect on April 1st. We've got a Q&A out there on Insight. We've tried to communicate to the employees, but what that federal law did is it put in place up to 80 hours of sick leave use for COVID-19 related events. And that's a nice benefit for our employees to have in this circumstance. It's a new benefit. The other piece that it offered too was for those that qualified for the benefit is it expanded the FMLA to allow people to take up to 10 weeks of leave at 2/3 pay if they have to care for a child who's out of school or if they've lost their daycare as a result of COVID-19. Again, there's some eligibility parameters that surround that I won't get into those details, but barring none, that's been a really big change, and it's something we've tried to work hard at communicating to folks to know that that's available. And again, that went into effect April 1st.
Got it. So what about you, Bill? How are you keeping your mental health going right now? I know you've been burning the candle a lot. When I get here in the morning, Bill's car is here. When I leave at night, Bill's car is here. So tell me how you're keeping your health right now.
Well, fortunately, it may be a little known fact here about the HR director is I'm a motorcycle guy. And for those of you out there who can relate, I don't ride a Harley. I ride a KTM 1190 Adventure. I get a lot of relief and comfort because you can social distance and you can ride by yourself. You can get in the outdoors and enjoy the outdoors. I absolutely love it. I went on a 2-hour ride last night, and it was like I spent 2 hours with a counselor. So it was great. My wife and I, we've been real disciplined, to be honest, on the other side with respect to the CDC guidance on social distancing, staying away. It's been difficult, but we've been very disciplined in that regard, spending a lot of time at home. And unfortunately, when people talk to me about COVID-19, I'm usually referring to the 19 as about how much weight I've gained since my wife's been cooking. I've been eating very good at home. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I get to use more of the exercise without the motorized wheels.
That's great. Putting on the COVID-19. I'm going to use that one, I think. So, all right. Thank you, Bill. I want to talk a little bit with Jeff and Jody. So Jeff Eckhoff is our Director of Planning and Development Services. Jody Fix, our Library Director. You know, both of them, I think, have some success stories that they can share just about how they're leading their teams through this with some innovations, using our core values, new approaches that they're having to utilize and pivot and do things quickly. So, Jeff, I'll maybe start with you to maybe share a success story or two with those who are listening.
Sure, thanks, man. You know, I think whenever you're under stress or crisis, it's great to have those core values, and you fall back and you look at those and you lead from there. And so when this first started, of course, your number one thing is safety. And with Bill's leadership, how do we get our people home? How do we get them home? And what's interesting, and there's like 3 things I can think of that were barriers. You know, we weren't able to take commercial permits online. We didn't know how the thing would work. I mean, we get hundreds of phone calls on our department a day. Inspections, we do 4,000 inspections a month. How is that going to work? And interesting enough, in all 3 instances, there are things we had talked about. Well, someday we'll do this, and someday we should do that, and we'll get to this, and we'll get to that. And all of a sudden, this hit, and with 2 weeks, we found out you can get that stuff done if you really need to, right? And everything that we did was something we had always talked about doing, but it was too hard, or it took too long, or we couldn't really figure it out. You get under crisis, and you run towards safety for your people, you figure it out. And it all went very smoothly. Some of the stuff we did in a day, some we did in a week. But today, we have 100% of our employees that can work from home. Our inspectors can work from the trucks. There's virtual inspections that we've been toying around with for as long as I've been here that we're doing now today, and reassign staff to do that. And so I guess the lesson learned is that in a time of crisis, refocuses you. And it's a time now to think about that. And it's a time to do those types of things. And it's really worked for us. So thanks for asking.
That's awesome. Jody, you got a similar story or success story to share with the library team?
Yeah, I would just like go right off of Jeff's thing. And our total focus has been safety both for the community and for the staff. In that first week, we took a staff who can only work in an in-person mode. Our entire operation is set up for people coming into our libraries and interacting and learning from us and doing programs with us. We took that entire team and we have them almost all working from home. We still have some in-building activities that we have to continue doing. COVID-19 has given us some opportunities and has pushed us in ways that are just extremely exciting. One of the library BHAGs is to get a digital branch going. Well, we've been kind of working on that, slugging along. We now have a digital branch. When you go to our website, the resources that you're seeing are the things that our customers can actually still get to. We took a significant shift in how we're purchasing materials and have moved a lot of our materials budget into increasing the numbers of digital items that people have, and our customers are responding. We also went from a staff that's really good at in-person programming to figuring out how to start putting more of that online. And that takes, it's a different skill. Mayor Paul, you make it look so good getting in front of a camera. You can do it so well. It is a different skill for people who are used to being in a room with 20 preschoolers who you're interacting with on how to do a story time that still is effective and has that human connection with those kids when they're not in the room with you. So I take great pride in how our staff has adapted. And we right now are working on scaling up even more things as we move into summer. Thank you, Paul.
That's awesome. Great examples of innovation. Yeah, I think those are a couple examples, but there's literally hundreds all over people who would say, this just doesn't work in government. In the last 45 days, we've proved we can probably pretty much do anything if we're forced to. So kind of to wrap us up today, I want to introduce a guy named Mike Grigsby. Mike is our new Director of Innovation and Technology. He has picked probably the worst time to start with the city of Sioux Falls because it's been a challenge on all levels, as you know, but he has taken over that team and brings an incredible skill set and background to the city. Mike is moving here with his family from Kansas City. And so big Chiefs fan, which I know Director Joe Frank appreciates as well, has a great background in technology, in working with smart city programs, in public safety and law enforcement, in transit, in chief information officer work. So he's a home run candidate. So I'm going to introduce Mike. Mike, maybe let you talk a little bit to the team and just say hello. Give us your elevator speech background, if you will.
No, Mayor, I appreciate it. And you've basically covered it. This has been, I know everybody's been so apologetic with my coming on board at this time, but I don't know that I would have asked for a better time to come on board, because getting to see the team work under these conditions in this environment has been so beneficial for me to really see, one, how well we can stretch, and two, how well we respond. I think if somebody was asking me what the two biggest things I've seen over my last 3 weeks, it's been creativity and just readiness. Everybody just seems ready to kind of put me in, coach, wherever the need is. I'll step in, kind of see a need, meet a need, and just the creativity of everybody across the board, not only at the leadership, but across the board from the city staff, as well as the community that I've seen. I've watched people become very resourceful. And I had a conversation with Jeff Eckhoff earlier this week, and I thought, I think that sums up is that so many times we think we have a resource problem, and it really is more a resourcefulness issue. And the city has shown its resourcefulness over this time in a way that my travels, I really have been on a global team with regard to seeing smart cities and helping cities do this. The resourcefulness that I've seen in Sioux Falls, I have not seen in very many cities, certainly to this respect. So I know I'm joining at a bizarre time, but I think that what we're going to get to do on the backside of this is really, really going to be strong and indicative of the city's resilience. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we're glad to have you, man. We're glad to have you on the team. Like I said, in some ways, it's a tough time to start. In some ways, it's absolutely perfect because we need your steady hand at the wheel. You got a great team over there, GIS and the comms team, IT team, and all the teams that you're leading over there. So thanks for joining us, Mike. And real quickly, your family. Let us know about your family. Tell the group about them.
Oh, no, I thank you for asking. And my wife is actually from Sioux Falls, so this is her hometown. She was born and raised here. I pulled her away, but it's been great kind of working our way back over here. And next week, I actually get to bring my family. I've been here solo for the last 3 weeks, so it's been tough being without them, but they'll be with me after next week, and I am ready to look forward to having better meals. I may need to go over to Bill's house, but I'm ready to have better meals than what I can fix for myself.
Well, good thing we didn't call this COVID-50, Bill. So, well, that's going to do it for today. I'm just going to wrap it up and with a couple final thoughts. One is, if you like this format or want us to do another one or have any feedback, send a note to Rana. You guys know how to reach Rana, just rdebor@siouxfalls.org. Just let her know your feedback, topics that you want to hear from the team here or other people across the city. Second thing, though, is I'll just say, stay tough and resilient right now. And hopefully what you've heard from the people here is you got a crack team that's working hard to keep the wheels on the bus, and they're doing a really great job. And I'll leave you with the quote of tough times don't last, but tough people do. And we got some tough people in the city, and we got some tough people working for the city, and that includes a lot of you guys. So thanks for all you do. Hope you have a blessed rest of your day, and I'll see you around real soon. Thanks, everybody.